You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, your partner, and your world. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is simple: to help you navigate life with more clarity, more confidence, and purpose-driven action, with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and some loving straight talk. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. Very excited to have my guest with me today, Kristian with a K, Kristian Stephan-Martin. Kristian is a friend of mine and he is a wonderful coach. He works with me in my business, in my coaching program, the Everyday Legends Academy. He is an integral part of the support and coaching system in the community. I feel very privileged to have him in here in my coaching community, in my coaching program, and to be able to trust his intellect, his heart, and the space that he can hold and the support and challenge that he can provide for the men that come into my coaching world. So that is one small reason why I wanted to have him on the podcast here today. And what I really wanted to explore with him was essentially the conversation that we get into. I see one of Kristian's remarkable strengths as taking a lot of the intellectual work that we end up doing with men around understanding themselves and understanding their behaviors and their beliefs patterns and their drivers and all that stuff, and really anchoring that stuff, getting through and clear on and processing the feeling and the emotion, and really getting back into their body and their feeling body, which can be a hard one to understand when it's foreign to you. And that's exactly what we get into in this podcast. We explore a pretty personal story of Kristian's in terms of his journey and how he got into this work, I suppose. On some level, he shares about his circumcision, which is something to listen out for. But we also talk about connecting to your heart, what that even is, what does that mean? What does it look like? How do we do it? And then we explore some different things, the idea that he talks about in terms of championing yourself. I really enjoy that, so keep an ear out for that one. Kristian is a wonderful soul, a great coach and facilitator, and he's also someone who I'll let him talk about his obsession and love for bachata, but the simple result of it being this: when you see the man dance, whoo, it is like, holy shit. It's impressive. And it's a little bit, well, it's definitely sensual, but I was going to say it gets things moving. And it does. That's the kind of the whole point. And you'll hear him describe that. So without further ado, the podcast today is with Kristian Stephan-Martin, a phenomenal individual, as I said, a big supporter of mine as well in my coaching program. And so it would be remiss of me not to add, if anything that you hear from me, and of course that Kristian and I talk about in this podcast, lands for you, but any of my content gives a little bit of a scratch that you want to itch, some more understanding, some more depth to you, and makes you feel like, you know what, I think there's something more for me out there in this world, but I don't quite know how to get it. I think there's more for me to access, more clarity, more confidence, more peace. Then that's the start of what we can work on and what we do in the Everyday Legends Academy. We have intakes coming up in the new year, so feel free to reach out. I'm always open to inquiry about spots available for that and to see if you're a good fit and if we can support you. Otherwise, this is today's episode, diving into understanding your heart, your emotions, what that shit really is, and how to actually do it. Wherever you're listening to this, be sure to click subscribe, download. I would love you to leave me a review. I know this is something I say every week, but I'm serious. Please take the 2 minutes to leave me a quick review. It does such wonders for getting this in front of more men who can enjoy it and can benefit from it. And with that, let's start the show. Mr. Kristian Stephan-Martin. Kristian, brother, welcome to the Everyday Legends podcast.
Thank you, sir. I've been waiting for this invite.
Mate, it is a pleasure and a privilege to have you here. And It does feel a little bit of a shame that you're sitting where you're sitting on the screen and I'm sitting where I'm sitting on the screen, where just yesterday you were sitting right here next to me in my office, but I'm glad that we could make it work. I'm excited to have a conversation. We've had many conversations over the years, but now we get to have one and see where it goes and share it with plenty of other people.
Yeah, I'm down.
Mate, where I want to start is, look, potentially it's a simple question, but as you know, it can be a question that opens in many directions. And so I invite you to take it wherever you want. Mate, who is Kristian Stephan-Martin?
A playful guy, curious guy. Yeah, I think those two things definitely sum me up pretty well. As work, I'm a coach, a facilitator. I teach a form of Latin partner dance called bachata, which I refer to as salsa's sexier cousin, because most people don't know it, but they know salsa. Yeah, that do.
Yeah, it is sexy too, by the way, watching your videos. And I've seen you do some of it in real time. Yeah, that'll do for now. Beautiful. Coach, facilitator, teach bachata. So can you tell us a little bit around, like, how did you get to doing what you do?
Yeah, ooh, easy. When I grew up in country Australia, and I had, for various things that happened in my life, I had this idea that I wasn't man enough or masculine enough. I held that belief from, I think I first noticed it in my teens, because that's when it started to come out, when I was attracted to girls, when I was 13, 14, 15. And it went through until about my early 20s. But like, that was the catalyst for me. I remember I was 15. Do you know what the game down ball is?
No.
Or Foursquare?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
You literally got four squares and you're hitting a tennis ball with your hand.
Yes.
I remember I was playing that, and I just had this realization, like, holy fuck, I've created the cage. And so if I've created the cage, I must have the key. And so that was at 15, and that really...
This is in the middle of a game of down ball.
I don't know if it was in the middle of it. I remember I was standing on the court though. Yeah. And immediate light bulb. And that definitely was a major catalyst for me wanting to understand the mind and emotions and performance. I played basketball, so I was also into it for that type of stuff, like sports psychology and visualization. Yeah, that was a major thing. And then, I guess I've just been on that path, self-teaching, learning from mentors.
So then that, to me, that implies that prior to the age of 15, you had some belief that you were in a cage of sorts.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. So then one day you're like, oh, I'm in a cage. I've got the key.
Yeah.
And so was that essentially, as you described, I don't think that I'm man enough?
Yeah, it was literally that story. I don't think I'm man enough. I don't think I'm masculine enough for her generally. And so the way that played out was, like, see the girl, think she's cute, want to talk to her, want to ask her out. Oh no, I'm not masculine enough for her. She's going to say no anyway. So there's no point. So I was like, I told the story, believed the story, and then acted upon, didn't act. Yeah, based upon the story.
Yeah, but it became manifest in your behaviors that you acted in ways that, I suppose, showcased to you at least that I'm not man enough or masculine enough.
Yeah.
And then you were very big into basketball. So how did it play out in that realm? Because you're in a realm with your peers, and basketball is one of those sports that attracts people who are taller, which is a really simple. And we're talking about rudimentary, adolescence, right? So a simple measure for masculinity on some level might be someone's physical size and stature, right? Did that play out more heavily in there? Did you feel more comfortable in there? What was it like there?
A good question. I was generally on any given team, I was generally the best player until I joined a professional team. um, so yeah, in my teenage years, that wasn't really a thing, but there was this element of like, don't be soft. I think that occurred for me when I started playing football more. But yeah, in basketball, I was always like skilled and probably one of the most athletic. So
do you think that cage still existed for you in that realm of your life?
Yeah, I don't think so.
And then you're 15, you have this realization that there's a cage and you have the key. What happens next? How did you approach that? Because that's, to me, I mean, look, everyone's different, but man, I wasn't having that kind of profound realization when I was 15. So what happened next? Did you have the, you had the curiosity clearly, but do you think you had the actual like intelligence behind you to know how to navigate that?
I perhaps not. I think it's kind of hard to remember, but it definitely sent me into like a learning phase. Like I started to understand that like we had this thing called a persona, or what I called a persona, and it was like it's just our energy. That's what I was calling it. And so that led me to, for some reason, be really curious in subtle energies. So like the chakra system, the meridian system, like Eastern and holistic philosophies. So I started like looking into that, and I was like, oh, we have these spinning discs, and all I have to do is like balance these things. It's like that's really cool. So I went down that path. But
were you talking to anyone in your life about this? Your mates?
Nah.
It was kind of a project of your own.
I remember I did often have older friends, but nah, I wasn't speaking to people. I don't think. Maybe my mum. I don't know. Yeah.
Interesting. And so then, did the story start to change?
Yeah, it did. Around 20, I had a session with someone, which he said he was a shaman, and it was funny. At first I was like, oh, that didn't do much for me. But then many years later, I looked back and I was like, oh no, that really did shift things big time for me. And the thing, like, for full transparency, was being circumcised at 4. I was circumcised at 4, which is really late, and it was hyper traumatic for me. Like I still have emotion there at times. I have anger, like, for the doctor because of how it all played out. I can remember in an instant how it felt to, walk down the driveway after having that surgery, and just how it felt. And because the story was, I've had my manhood removed and taken away from me. So yeah, when I saw this shaman at 20, that was a big shift into that.
Right. So that was part of the session, essentially, was exploring that.
Yeah.
So then, what happened to that story? I'm not man enough. I'm not masculine enough. Broadly speaking, because I know this, obviously, I'm challenging you to go into your memories here. But between that moment on the court, some down ball, and that session at 20, when you are curiously exploring, figuring that story out, did it strengthen? Did you gain an insight into it? It was clearly still there on some level. How did it happen? Well, like, how did it play out in the realm of dating and with women?
One thing that I did was cut my sexuality off. And I mean, you could argue that was kind of done for me in a literal aspect, but like, an interpretation or something that did happen is because because I was like, I'm not masculine enough, I'm not man enough, or I also pegged myself as not one of those guys. Yeah, not one of the guys who's just a bit more raw, bit more rough, bit more country, bit more just fucking says what he wants, goes for what he wants type of thing. And so I would see guys who I was like, mate, you're a dickhead, with this incredibly
ironic,
like beautiful, yeah, incredibly beautiful, both physically and like personality. You know, girls and young women in my 20s. I was like, mate, you're a wanker. I was like, I don't want to be like you. It was almost this like, I'm not going to be like you, so I'll show you type of thing. But all that did was just cut myself from my balls. And yeah, I didn't step into my sexuality and my sensuality until early 20s.
So beyond that right there, you know, playing kind of comparison and I'm different to you, and actually that by the sound of it, like creating a bit of kind of a resentment almost. What did it do to cutting off your sexuality, your sensuality? What did that actually look like? You didn't date? What was it?
I didn't go for the girl that I really wanted.
Right.
Yeah, like I can remember this so clearly. There's like, I remember names, man. It's like, there's Bridie. This is hilarious. There's Bridie. I'm like, she's the one that I like, but nah, I'm not good enough for her. So I'll go for like one removed from her friend who was cute, but not the one that I want.
Yeah.
Because that felt safer. And I felt like, okay, I can get you. And then I realized that played out actually in my, like, just going for anything really.
Right.
It's like, see the thing. Yes. Fuck yes. Probably not good enough.
Yeah. So. Take the one to the side that's safer and easier, that doesn't require more of me.
Yes.
To really challenge my stories.
Yeah.
And do you think at the time you thought like you were the only dude who had a belief like that? It's like those guys are male and masculine and man enough, but I'm not. Was there any awareness around that?
I didn't even consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what was going on in their heads, right? I mean, we both work with men, and so we know that that's a pretty bloody common story for a lot of guys, right?
Yeah.
And it might sound different, it might look very different, but yeah, we tend to get into that, you know, I suppose comparison on some level, but as you said, that separation. You know, look at you, mate, you're a dick. You know, I'm going to show you, I'll be different, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And how did that work for you?
Well, yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it got reinforced by girls. Like I would have girls. Yeah. Girls saying, I can't even count the amount of like teenage girls in high school said to me, "Oh, you're so different. You know, you're
right." Even though you were trying to be different.
Yeah, you're so different. You're not like the other guys. And
in a positive or negative light tone?
Well, it was a positive. It was a positive tone. But what that did continue to reinforce was, you know, the being cut off from the sexuality. What was great about it was it.
Is that because you saw that other guys were quote unquote sexual? Do you think as well?
Yeah. I don't know if like seeing them as sexual, but yeah, I guess. Yeah, in a way, yes. I just describe it differently.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So that meant like I was in my heart a lot more, I think, and I have always had a really easy ability to connect with women, and so I now look back on it like, wow, like so many men don't know how to just feel and connect to their own heart. And I was able to do that from a really early age. And then now having, you know, become really awakened in my sexual energy, my sensuality, is great. I have access to both. Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. And I'm sure we could keep exploring teenage and adolescent Kristian. But okay, I want to go into this thing that you just said there around, connecting to and access to your heart. You've felt like you've had the ability somewhat to do that for some time. And, it's weird, right? Because it sounds like there was the story that you had, and then part of that was like, I am not man enough, and therefore I'm different. But also, I want to be different because I don't want to be like you. And then it was reinforced in a positive light from women. But that also reinforced the negative light. Shit, I'm different. I'm sure we could keep unpacking that. But to me, it highlights how, the stories that we create in our head, we will reinforce them. We'll seek out evidence that isn't necessarily evidence to reinforce them. And we can get ourselves into a bind, let's say.
Yeah.
But what I want to go to now is to connect to my heart. So you recognize that that's something you've had, and you certainly do now, and that a lot of guys struggle with that. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I think I'll just spitball what comes up. For me, our heart is our navigational, our North Star. Both like what we want, but then there's like two paths to it. It's like they're going outwards, but they're going inwards, of course. Going into the depths to then follow that in the world. And definitely just feeling like really tuning into what actually do I want? What actually do I desire? And I do believe our heart next to always knows what we desire.
And so then, as you said, a lot of guys struggle to connect to that. Why do you think that is? Let's start there.
Yeah, easy answer is the stories we do get fed. I mean, especially you're Kiwi, and you live in Australia, so that, don't cry, toughen up, don't be a pussy. All these things connect us from our feeling. It's really simple. Yeah.
Yeah. So we lose a connection to that. And then, like anything that we don't feed and nourish atrophies.
Yeah.
So it's hard to use something. I always think of the analogy of, like if anyone, certainly in the day, had the old school cast on their leg or their arm, and then when it finally came off, there was this like dank forearm that was like whittled away, and it was all white, and the hair was all black. But atrophies, right, is weak as piss. And so, it's kind of what we're talking about with men's access to their heart. So then what does that look like, being able to shift from a place where you struggle to access your heart? And the extension, I think, of what you said was connect to your feeling and emotive side, right?
Yeah. What does it look like? Or how do you do it? Like, what's the...
Yeah. So how does someone start to make that connection? A guy's listening, man, that's been my whole life. How do I connect into that?
Yeah. First thing, acknowledge that everyone has feelings. I mean, like, let's start with like 101 is like, feelings and emotions are feelings and emotions. And if you're a human on this earth, you've got them. So can we just like, pay a little acknowledgement to that, and just like, wipe off this idea that it's a weak thing to do, first of all. So then we have the permission to step forward and start to feel. And so that is the next part, is starting to feel as these things come up, rather than pushing them to the side or down, or just exhausting yourself, running yourself tired. So it is literally stopping, like literally stop, sit your ass down, and just feel the sensations and the things swirling around inside of you, and breathe.
And so then, enter in immense discomfort, like this is foreign, which gets me back up into my head. I don't want this. I'm going to try and think my way out of it. Like, how does the dude navigate that when it's so foreign and confronting, and his general mode of being, his quote unquote strength, is to go straight back up into his head?
Yeah.
Rationalize, story, avoid.
Yeah. There are some things that really support one's ability to do this, and which like enables someone to just sit there a bit longer. The first thing is just understanding that they're not, I don't believe emotions are good or bad. I believe they're comfortable or uncomfortable, or enjoyable, pleasurable, or whatever. The opposite.
Shit house.
So shit house. So
yeah, but I like that, comfortable or uncomfortable. It's a nice reframe.
Yeah, because most people are negative emotions. Well, emotions are a GPS system, in my opinion. You're angry. Okay, cool. Like, sit in that for a moment. What does that actually mean? When someone is angry, it's generally reflects that they're either frustrated at themselves or someone else, and they feel like wrongdoing has been done. Okay, you feel shame. Well, what do you feel shame for? Well, most people, when I've worked with them, shame comes back to, they realize, fuck, I was just out of my own integrity. I wasn't living according to my values. So I've always seen emotions as a GPS system, a feedback system. Like, oh, you feel fulfilled. You feel fulfilled right now. Cool. Like, let's take note of, like, what did you do today? What just happened? Oh, wow. Like, I moved my body, had really stimulating conversations, and I was present, Okay, cool. Well, then do more of those things.
Yeah,
probably. So there's heaps to that. Another thing is just championing yourself. I was at a training called Awakening Women, a training for men. Yeah, I always get confused. But it was a training for women to heal their relationship to their own inner masculine and to the external masculine. And so the facilitator, as I was being a witness at this ceremony, the facilitator was talking about her inner man as if it was like a teenager. Like that was the age of her inner masculine. But then behind that sat like a father figure. And I do, when I talk about championing someone, championing ourselves, I think of it like that. The super supportive father figure that is on the fence, like saying, like, get up again, like, great try, keep going, you can do it, you're learning, and puts in perspective that this thing is new. This thing is foreign. You're gonna fall over. And so like I think a lot of guys have a propensity to be kind of, I've got to smash it. Yeah, like we've seen that. I coach in your program, so we've seen dudes that come in, I want to smash this personal development stuff type of thing. It's like, cool, I love the attitude.
I'm going to win at it.
Yeah, I'm going to win at it. And
today, now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to just finish that, it's like, you can dip your toes in. Yeah, like, you don't have to dive fucking head first into the emotions and the feelings. Like, go for it if you want, but like, hey, it's foreign, go to your ankles, let the water get warm, then go to your knees, then go to your, like when you go into cold water sometimes.
You don't need to be an Olympic 10-meter high diving board specialist the first time you get into the water.
Exactly. So just know that it's practice. Yeah. Like, just feel for a little bit, come back, feel some more, come back.
And so something that I'm also connecting to there, and like, it's a word that I use a lot in my own life, and certainly in my coaching and in the coaching program that you're such a valuable part of, is patience. And I'm also getting that, again, for me as a new dad, when you talk about the father figure, because one thing, first of all, I think is that I love that idea of championing yourself, and part of that is having, this father figure. For some guys, there might be an invitation to maybe reshape what the father figure is, because yours might not have been that
Mm.
role, right? And so in that is a whole different and deeper rabbit hole in terms of fathering and reparenting yourself. But what is the father figure that you needed and that you need right now? And, one of the things that I'm learning as a father to an actual child is like a whole new definition of patience. Like, as you say, encouragement, support, you're doing well. The last thing I can do to my child if she's trying something new is to be impatient with her, like hurry her
Yeah.
along. It's just not going to work. And what
Yeah.
that patience allows is a bit of grace, right? As you're talking about, like, get your toes in, get your ankles warm. And in that, I get to take my time with this. But if there's that need to, basically I've got to win at it right now because it's new, and then I'll be good at it. And then I can be seen as achieving at it, I can break through this immense discomfort quickly. Shit, probably not going to happen. And I would suggest it's probably going to add to the dumpster fire, maybe, that is the inner dialogue around that thing that you've avoided for so long, sitting and feeling your emotions.
Yeah. And to just tack on to the end, trying to get through your emotions is the quickest way not to.
Can you expand on that for us?
Yeah. So, yeah, just can I? It's just been true. Is that like trying to, okay, I'm going to sit in a feeling so I can get through it, get rid of it. That doesn't work. Like, because that's just not how it works in my experience.
Yeah. So in that approach, the intention or the desired intention is to get to a result.
Yeah.
Right. Versus what would be the alternative?
Literally sit in the feeling and feel it for no reason. Yeah. And let it move through you. Yeah. Like in the work that I do, it's very much about feeling it in the body and breathing. And then, like, what, if you sit with that long enough, what happens? Well, it usually starts to move, and it usually starts to evoke life. And sometimes we might get, I work with guys, they get like, I'm angry. I'm like, cool, be angry. And we'll go into like stomping or like really primal stuff. Sometimes they're like, oh, I just feel like I need to cry. And I'm like, cool, go ahead and cry. And they just cry and they release. And it's just, it's soft. Sometimes they just, and then they'll get through that and they'll laugh, and it's learning to let these emotions and energies move through us. There's a whole nother story around what I guess I consider emotional mastery, which is the ability to feel your emotions, but not be at the mercy of them. So, like, this is not to confuse always running from emotion as your guidance system, but to feel them, let them move through you, and then feel even deeper, and then move from there. Like, because two ends of the spectrum is I don't feel any emotions, I'm numb, and I'm about to implode at any moment. And then the other one is like, I feel all of them, and every single thing moves me up and down, and it's a roller coaster. So in the middle, to me, is healthy feeling. Yeah.
And yeah, there's a few things that, one, I recognize, and also, I think we see a lot. There's that first one that you said when you enter the spectrum, which is I don't feel anything. And that's something I've heard from a lot of guys as well. And it's a head fuck, because they're not feeling it. And so they're all in their head about it, right? And there's a want to feel, and often that can create behaviors that, quote unquote, allow me to feel something, right? Like getting drunk or taking some kind of substance or doing something that allows me to, quote unquote, feel, that aren't necessarily the most effective things for us. And they just kind of perpetuate the thing. But then coming back to the earlier thing that you mentioned around emotions as a GPS system. And so, what I'm getting in that as well is there's a message. There is a direction for you in it, but only when you sit. right? Versus if your intention is to I just got to get to the end of it, then you're going to actually miss the message that it has for you in the direction. Does that kind of speak to what you're talking about?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So then there's another thing with emotions. You said earlier in regards to your story, you said at 4 years old you were circumcised and it was very traumatic and all of the things. And then you said sometimes there's still some emotion I have with that. There's still some emotion in there. So can you speak to that, I suppose, idea of, like there's perhaps we might have, unprocessed emotions from our past. And so what's going on there? How do we actually start to explore that?
Yeah. So to me, emotions become stuck and stored in the body until we release them. And so it's very easy for me to see someone who's stuck and has unprocessed stuff because it literally is revealed in their body. Like sometimes, and their behavior, sometimes they're just like hyperactive people, or sometimes they are really lifeless, and I can see that as well. And so that's just what happens basically is like they're stored and stuck, and the way out is, like we said, starting to feel. And I liken it to, like a flower that's trying to grow, and you just pile a concrete slab over. It's like another concrete slab, like don't be pussy, boys don't cry, blah blah blah, or like messages and experiences like that is just anything. Like slabs of concrete. And so that thing is still there. It's not there, and it wants to, the flower wants to come out towards the sun and have its moment. So it is the whole process is about feeling through those layers.
Yeah, and so then if someone's sitting there going, okay, you know what, I had some heavy shit in my past, or even it could be like, one of my parents passed away a few years ago, and I don't think I processed that shit very well, right? So there's got to be a difference between, like there's an emotion right now to something like anger, like as you said before, maybe I feel hard done by in a conversation with my partner right now. So that's a bit more obvious. It's here for me to, okay, I'm going to try and sit and process and feel and let it come. And then there's this thing in the past. How do I then connect to that emotion that's in my body?
That's a good question. Sometimes I don't think you have an option. Like, because it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And so you need to have, and I imagine anyone listening to this does, some sense of growth focus or searching focus, like curiosity, inquiry into like, oh, I wonder, especially if you keep repeating things, like, because you're not just going to go, well, some people from this, if it's sitting like right on the periphery, some people will listen to this and be like, oh, fuck, yeah, okay, now I see that. But some people will be like, oh, I don't know. So
or I don't have that.
Exactly.
I never had the emotion.
Right? So looking at your life and the patterns that keep playing out that you like and don't like what's going on there basically. And so if you see patterns that you don't like, it's still, there's no guarantee that you're going to find something that is deep down there, in my opinion. But often I'll have moments, because I have, done so much work with myself and mentors. I know all the things that have happened in my past, and then new things will reveal themselves. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, that was a thing for me. Holy shit, I didn't even realize that at the time. And then it starts there, because now I have the awareness. Now I can do something.
And so, what you could perhaps do is what you said before, right? Like simply sit and be and see what comes. And don't need that to be clear and fluent the first moment that you're sitting down to do it. It might go, you know what, I'm going to commit to sitting and being with that thought as a bit of an intention, that memory, let's say, for a week. I'm going to do it and then see how we go.
Yeah.
And it might feel awkward, or you might feel like this does nothing, it's bullshit. Patience.
Yeah.
Remember the championing of yourself. Yeah, very nice. So then, I mean, you kind of mentioned something to a degree on it before in terms of the spectrum, but because one of the things I think that we hear as men, you know, as you said, there's messages that we will hear when we're younger, and it could be things like harden up and don't cry, and things that lead to us shutting off perhaps our emotional side. But then we might hear any other number of messages or witness things that create stories. Could be anything. But then we also get them now as adults. Some of those things are the same. And some, I see them at the almost the other end of the spectrum. Men need to be vulnerable. Men need to open up. Men, right? And it might come from a great place, but it can be potentially confusing to hear this contrasting message. One of those I think that we hear is like men need to communicate their emotions. So if I haven't really been able to connect to them very much, what does that then look like for me to communicate it? Because that seems to involve someone else. I'm just figuring it out myself.
Yeah.
What do I do with that? You know, maybe it's my partner. I need you to communicate your emotions with me.
Yeah. So two things come up for me. If you are listening to this and you're the partner who wants the partner to communicate, and you ask that of them, I think there's a part where you've got to realize it might not come out how you want it to. Ideally, it doesn't come out in a hurtful way, but it might not come out in a polished way, and it might not
or a way that you would do it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let your partner have their way of communicating, because I can guarantee there's nothing that'll shut down someone trying to learn and practice something than you encouraging them to do it and then just going, no, that's not the way.
Yeah, well, that's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's probably terrified of being wrong in his life anyway, or being made to be wrong.
100%. So there's that. And then the other thing is, I love to use the phrase explore out aloud. And I'll tell people this. I'll say it before I say the thing as a permission piece for myself. I'll be like, hey, I'm just going to explore out aloud, you know, what's coming up for me. And so I'm not trying to have it formulated. I'm just letting what comes up come out, not in an explosive and irresponsible way, but in an owning way, and not as very much like ownership is a key part in this, because otherwise shit can get like real hot between the two of you. Like, oh, you did this and this is what I'm feeling. Well, Kristian told me to say what comes up, come out. No, it's like you have to go beneath that. Okay, like I felt when you said this that I just felt like I wasn't enough, or like you were asking more of me than I can give, or it might not be related to that person, or just sharing like, hey, what I've been feeling lately is I'm really sick of my job, or I'm really nervous. I'm sick of my job. I kind of want to leave, but I'm nervous because I know that like you're not working right now and we've got a baby, or like whatever, right? But I just think that giving yourself permission verbally to that person is really valuable. Not trying to have it packaged nicely, and not trying to see the end result. Like a lot of, this is my take, you might have a different one. When I've worked with men before, they're like, well, I don't know what I want. Sometimes you have to have the conversation to clear the stuff, to then you like clear the stuff, let it settle, and then something will clarify.
Yeah, instead of having this need or story that whatever I speak into the world has to be polished and final, and it's a commitment for life in stone, and it gets to actually be a work in progress, which is essentially what I'm hearing when you're talking about that. I'm just going to kind of think out loud here on this.
Yeah.
Very nice. And again, what I'm getting there as a through line, I suppose, is a bit of patience with self and asking for that patience and support with the person that you may be communicating with. Now, there's obviously the example of a partner, as you said. Hey, I need you to be more emotional with me. Well, shit, that could look like me being angry, but there's ownership and kindness and compassion. But then someone potentially putting their lens on, this is what it needs to look like. So almost that permission piece of self is, if I haven't said it, this is also hopefully creating a space where I can ideate and get it out loud, and you can have some patience with me as I work through it. Or maybe even bounce things back to me, which, by the way, you can say all of these things if you need to. Hey, I don't know how to process or communicate about this stuff. Can you give me some support, some rope as I feel my way through in the dark? I mean, doesn't that feel a hell of a lot easier to explore than it needing to be perfect, right? What an expectation to set of ourselves. Again, especially if it's something that you have ignored for 20 or 30 or 40 years.
Yep.
So then one of the things that we are talking about, and by and large here, is this kind of getting into the heart, getting into the body. And so I feel it would be remiss of me not to bring bachata into the conversation. Mm-hmm. Something that is very in the body, and in some of the work that we do in my coaching, one of those things from time to time, outside of COVID times, is getting a bunch of men together and doing some stuff in person. And one of the things that you have brought to that space, beyond many others, is a little bit of a bachata experience. So I want you to explore that. You can go, to your love of bachata and how it came about, but what that actually can be beyond you personally going and experiencing some dance and moving your body in a way that you do, but actually something that has a teaching tool and a bunch of lessons for men.
So one way that I use bachata, again, is a Latin partner dance. So generally dance between a man and a woman. Generally the man is the lead, the woman is the follower. Doesn't always have to be like that. Is relationship dynamic, actually. Yeah. So there's so many elements to it. The first teaching is to be in your own body. Yeah. And like, especially when we're dancing to music, like being able to feel the music in your body so that you can communicate that to your partner. And so, it's a lead and follow dance, which means there's no script. Yeah. So like, I raise my hand over here. My partner knows that's an indication of the move that's about to come.
Right.
Yeah. And so ideally they follow, and we have like a really fun, beautiful, awesome dance together. So yeah, the first one is being in your own body. And then there's a whole heap of teachings around, so if you're too flimsy and flaky and you're uncertain as the leader, well, of course your follower is going to be uncertain in what they do. So you've got to be clear and confident. But if you're overly strong, and let's call that forceful, then it's really unpleasant, and you can actually, physically injure someone. Yeah. So there's so many parallels between life, and then of course there's the other end of it, the follower learning to trust. Yeah, the follower learning to trust, learning to surrender, give themselves over. But there's actually both of that. Yeah, like for me, I feel like even though I'm the lead, I actually attempt to surrender to the music first, which very much could, you could call that in life your heart, your soul, God, higher guidance, the universe, whatever. Yeah, like listening, and letting it come through you.
Yeah, I love that. And I have witnessed that both by watching men, but also I've been a participant briefly. And what I have seen is, talking about any of this stuff, right? But talking about things like relationship dynamics and the masculine and feminine and being the leader and following and surrendering, there's this element that can, I believe as men, we do need to get things intellectually. But then what I've witnessed when you've taken men through this is when it comes into their body, there's this whole different level of getting it.
Yeah.
Like it lands, especially the surrendering, right, thing and being guided. They've got to have their eyes closed and they're being led around the room by someone else. And there's this whole other thing of their safety, feeling it in their body, which I think is, potentially a very valuable lesson that a lot of men could do with learning, right?
Yeah.
Also, the other thing that popped to my mind when you were talking about the lead and follow, I put my hand here and it's an indication that we're going to move in this direction, was maybe this is because I watched the Andre the Giant documentary the other day, but professional wrestling, the dance, because that's almost what that is too, right? It's a lead and follow, very different. But that thing where there has to be communication, sometimes it's not verbal, right? And our bodies, as you said before, are telling on us, they're speaking. And we can actually use that to serve us when we can connect to our body, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Kristian with a K. That is the time we have for today. So for now, can you tell us what you're doing in the world, if there's anything that you would like to share with us and where people can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Great place to end, actually. As you know, I've been coaching for you and I've been coaching for myself. I'm taking that in a new direction, and it is one of the two things is going to be working with teams and individuals and companies to understand embodied leadership and relationships, trust and communication through dancing. So, if anyone is listening and they want to do that, of course, they can hit me up for that, and I can pass them on information when we do that next. You can always follow me on all the social media things, and I'm also launching very soon a program for teenage boys, which is actually basketball related. So it's helping them to become skilled, purposeful, and confident on and off the court. And like I said, basketball was a massive thing for me. And yeah, so I'm really excited to go back to that, to teach teenage boys the skills and how to use their body, but also how to deal with things like self-doubt on the basketball court, intimidation when another player is really talented, how to champion your mindset, things like that. So if anyone has teenage boys, I'll be available on the Gold Coast, Brisbane and Byron for that. Beautiful. So you can hit me up.
I love it. And that's Kristian with a K. And I say that because that's kind of part of your tagline. I've heard you say many times, but also we'll make sure that we have all the links and everything that you can find Kristian on the website associated with the podcast. Brother, it's been an absolute joy. As you know, we could keep talking about this stuff and take it into the tangents all day. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, you bloody legend.
Welcome.
You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, with your partners, and in your world. If you have got something from this podcast, please share it with someone that you think could benefit from it. And please visit your home for podcasts. Like us, subscribe to us, leave us a review. Your feedback is phenomenal in getting this in front of more eyes and ears. Until next time, I'm Mike Campbell, and remember to build that legendary integrity.